Welcome back to Agritecture's travel-free digital conference. I'm Henry Gordon-Smith, founder and CEO of Agritecture, and this online conference is all about featuring movers and shakers in the urban agriculture and local food systems industry. Today I'm really excited because we're going to be speaking with Tobias Peggs, CEO of Square Roots. His presentation is coming up soon. But before that, make sure you subscribe and like this video if you're into it, and comment with your questions. You can see all of our videos at youtube.com/agritecture. And you can also subscribe and check it out at agritecture.com/digital-conference. I'm really excited about today's presentation because I know Tobias Peggs. We both actually live in the same neighborhood in New York City. And it's really exciting to hear from you today, Tobias. So next up, we're going to hear a presentation from Tobias about Square Roots and adapting to COVID-19.
Hi, thank you, Henry, so much for having me at this virtual conference. As you said, we live in the same neighborhood, but I feel like I haven't seen you for a decade at this point. And this is like such a crazy situation. And what I'm hoping to do today is give a very quick overview of what we do at Square Roots as a company, and then talk about how we've had to adapt as coronavirus has hit. When you're running a company and you've got a growth plan and you kind of, have a good idea of what the next 3 to 5 years look like, and then a massive curveball like this comes along, which has, economic and emotional impact, it really makes you think hard and fast about how to run your business. So before I kind of get there, I think everybody tuning into this conference is interested in urban farming. Maybe they run an urban farm. They will all understand, why the industrial food system is such a disaster for people and the planet, and why we have to, move towards more local, sustainable food systems. And the way that we're tackling that at Square Roots is really through a platform that's got 3 main components. The first is a very scalable technology platform. The second is what we call our next-gen farmer training program, the actual people who are in the farms doing the work. And then the fact that we got farmers and a technology platform means that we can get food out to the market. So I'll just run through those 3 things very quickly, just to give people a sense of what our business is, and then we'll talk about how things changed. So this is what our farms look like. We actually build farms inside refurbished shipping containers. Obviously, there are a number of companies doing something similar. And again, most people on this call will be familiar with the principles here, right? We're essentially trying to recreate some environment from around the world that is optimized for growing a particular crop. So this is a basil farm, and inside this farm, we're basically looking at places like Genoa in the northwestern region of Italy and recreating what's happening in the environment at peak basil growing season, right? What is the temperature profile in the day, and how cool does it get at night, the CO2 levels, all of these factors, and we recreate that in the box and grow that amazing Genovese basil for you. But obviously we're able to put that box anywhere, like Brooklyn. This is a quick video representation of our first farm in Brooklyn. So we have about 10 of these, we call them grow zones, these containers. They're there in a parking lot in Bed-Stuy, actually in the same neighborhood as we live, Henry. And, the general idea is that you can pop these containers up very quickly on a, underutilized parking lot or something like that. And then as soon as demand increases in that particular market, you can simply expand, increase your growing capacity by adding more modules. And over time, we've also developed vertical designs. This is one that is going to be built in Florida. And of course, with all of these farms, whether we're doing horizontal or vertical, we have farmers in there. And so this is a great mechanism for local job creation as well. So our farmers, very briefly then, this is kind of the second bit of the business. We had to think very hard about where our farmers come from when we were putting the business together. Again, most people on this call will know about the demographic time bomb that's about to explode here in America, certainly, where the average age of a farmer is almost 60 years old today. And so, who's going to grow the food when those people retire in 5 or 6 years' time, right? We need to find more ways to bring younger people into the industry. And that's what we've done at Square Roots. So specifically, we've built something called the Next Gen Farmer Training Program. This is a 12-month program where we bring in cohorts of young people, motivated, passionate, ready to put in the hard work, but they don't necessarily need to have any experience growing plants. and we can surround them with our technology and our training and our team and really get them up to speed to be able to run one of these grow zones in about 6 weeks, actually. And through the 12 months with us, then these people, they're a paid team member, right? They're growing the food, we're selling the food. That's how the business makes money. But we're also training them in things like plant science and community building and other skills that are really aimed to help them launch a career in local food systems. We think about ourselves as growing food, but also growing the next generation of leaders in the industry at the same time. And of course, many of these people come and work for Square Roots at the end of their program as we grow. So the food that these farmers are growing is absolutely fantastic. This is how our product looks in markets like New York, where we sell mostly to retail stores. We'll grow a range of premium herbs in New York City. And then what's really wonderful is enabled by the technology platform that we've built, which is tracking every single step of the plant from seed to sales. We're able to show that information to the consumer. You can scan a QR code on the back of every package, and you'll see what we call the transparency timeline, which gives you that story of where your food comes from. So it's all about total transparency in the supply chain here. As I mentioned, in New York, our business model is that we sell direct to grocery retailers. So our farm is there in Brooklyn, and we distribute to about 100 different retailers across Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. And what's really wonderful is that in a city like New York, with that very high urban density, all of our retail partners are within 5 miles of the farm. And what that means then is you can get very, very creative about how you think about distribution. This is how we distribute our product, right? So these are battery-powered tricycles with climate-controlled storage on the front. So the food is literally in the farm, it's harvested, boom, it goes straight into these controlled climate modules, and then we cycle around town and get that food onto the grocery store shelf, all on the same day of harvest. So when that product hits the shelf, it's super fresh, really fragrant, the shelf life is amazing, and it's, I would argue, the best quality product that you can buy. That's how we work in New York. About 9 months ago, we also announced a national partnership with a company called Gordon Food Service. They're one of the largest mainline broadline food distributors in the US, headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have about 200 distribution centers and retail stores across the country. And we're now building farms in partnership with them on every single one of those. The idea here is that we can work together and bring local food at a national scale. This actually is just a quick flyover of the first pilot farm that we built with them in Grand Rapids in Michigan. So again, it's this container design. What you'll see in the middle, we call that the head house. That is areas for things like biosecurity, cold storage, shared spaces for packing, and also kind of office space in there as well. And this is really a facility with world-class biosecurity, and meets the absolute highest standards of food safety, which obviously, working with a company like Gordon Food Service, that is a top priority for them. And it was a really, really good collaboration, actually. Amazingly, that farm was built in 3 months, and we started harvesting from that farm in the fall of last year. So that's Square Roots under normal circumstances, and then this happened. So probably, when would this have been, 3 or 4 weeks ago, things really started to get bad in New York. Luckily, about 6 or 7 weeks ago, we put a coronavirus kind of safety team in place, and they developed a framework for what-if scenarios. And what-if scenarios, really started to come into play here, right? So, what we're seeing immediately, right, as soon as this happened, is a massive change in where our customers are, right? The chart that you're seeing on the left-hand side is a chart of restaurant occupancy, today versus 1 year ago, and you'll see that dramatic decline, which is basically people are not eating at restaurants anymore. They can't. We're locked down. And so as a consequence, companies that are servicing that restaurant world are having to think about entirely new models altogether. Obviously, though, people need to eat. And what we're seeing is a huge spike in demand now for grocery retail. Obviously, initially people were hoarding, right? Just running to the local supermarket and buying whatever that they could. But now we're beginning to see that demand kind of, come back to what we think is a new normal. And, it's anywhere between 50 and 100% higher than what it was a month ago, right? It's pretty remarkable. I think the reality, though, is we are heading for a recession, here and probably globally. And so, we look at increasing grocery demand and think, okay, well, that's good. But, what does that recession mean in the future around what the customer is wanting from those grocery stores? So these are the things that we're starting to think about now. In terms of Square Root's operations, what we had to do very, very quickly, as we were kind of adapting to this, was look at our own farming workflows and figure out how we could keep the farms operating so that we could keep growing food and getting that food out to customers in the community, but obviously do that in a safe way for people, where we were completely respecting social distancing protocols and all the rest of it. So very simply, the first thing that we did was reduce the number of people that are in the farms. And so obviously less people in the same space means more space per person. And now you can still do the work, but you can do that work at least with 6 foot distance from anybody else. So less people, slightly less efficient processes. That means our capacity was reduced. So we're growing less food, but we're still growing food, and we're doing that in a very safe way, and we're able to get that out to our grocery customers. The other major change is obviously, we're a farming company, but we're not all farmers, right? We have marketers and technologists and food safety people and policy people. And, I'm kind of in that bucket. And this is pretty much what my day looks like right now, right? I am not hanging out on the farm talking to the farmers, right? I'm sat in this lovely basement room talking with my team. But, there is some amazing work that is happening here. We now have a daily COVID response stand-up meeting with this leadership team. And the sort of objective for that team is really to digest today's news, get an update from what's happening on both of our farms in Brooklyn and in Michigan, figure out if we need to implement new policy quickly, and then communicate that out to the rest of the organization in a calm way, but obviously as quickly and decisively as we can. So this is like a daily activity at this point. Where, across the company, people have had to step up and take on new roles. This is Steph on the right-hand side here. She's our office manager in Brooklyn. And now we call Steph our sanitizer. She's learned everything about sanitization and hygiene, and somehow managed to get hold of a 50-gallon tank of Purell that she's now absolutely, the person in charge of, which is pretty funny. On the other side of that, the video here, we still run a sales process, right? And we're trying to get our product out to retailers, but whereas previously that was all about the face-to-face relationship and press the flesh, as they call it over here. Now we've had to come up with virtual farm tours, right, to allow people to come inside the farm without physically being there. So like lots of innovation going on all around the company. It's pretty amazing. So if we look further out, it's also helpful to look at history as well. So, I've talked to a lot of people, retailers. Richard Pennycook here is quoted, right, chairman of the British Retail Consortium. So these are sort of pretty high level government advisors. And, when you look at history and you talk to these people, what they'll tell you is that we had a massive recession from the financial crisis from 2008. And obviously that crisis, that recession, that was all about money, right? People lost their jobs. Immediately coming out of that, people didn't really care about where their food came from, right? They just wanted calories cheaply to somehow feed their family. And there are actually pretty amazing charts that you can see in the UK where you can draw a parallel line between that recession and then the rise of the obesity epidemic in the UK. It's pretty frightening stuff. Coming out of that recession, as the economy gets healthier and people have a little bit more money in their pocket, you know, what we saw was this kind of flight towards value. Again, right, cheap calories, but also an acceleration away from cooking at home and an acceleration towards eating out, right? In the US, coming into this year, more than 50% of dining dollars are spent at restaurants, right? You know, we only ate at home kind of half of the time. Now, what is interesting as we start to think about the post-COVID-19 consumer, again, we're heading for a recession, and it is going to be deep and brutal and ugly, and millions of people are losing their jobs, and it is heartbreaking, and we should not underestimate how horrible that is going to be for a lot of people. But in addition to this recession being about money, this recession is also about health. Right, we have all been affected by this. Some more than others. Obviously, especially if you know someone or you're close to someone who's passed due to this. The other thing with COVID-19, of course, is it's non-discriminating. Right, globally, we are all suffering from this, and people are thinking about how do we make the world a better place coming out of this. And what is interesting is that people like Richard are already seeing that post-COVID consumer beginning to think about healthy food, right? And food that they can trust. Do I really trust this food to feed to my children? Local is something that he's seeing a lot, right? In a world where economies are going to be decimated, right? That consumer making choices about supporting their local economy is going to become really important. And then the other thing is just people's confidence to go back to restaurants, right? Is that going to happen anytime soon, right? How quickly will you want to go to a space where you're tightly packed with 100, other people? The chances are we're all going to be cooking at home a lot more, doing grocery shopping a lot more. And just because then you're cooking at home a lot more, you're going to be a lot more curious about where that food comes from. And, someone like Richard is saying that post financial crash, he thinks that put the organic movement back by 10 years in the UK because people just didn't care about it anymore. But he's actually seeing an acceleration now of that movement post-COVID, again, because of all the kind of health issues and the trust issues that we are all suffering right now. So, most of us in urban farming have got a similar framework, right, for how the industrial system is one where there are opaque, complex supply chains, and it takes weeks for food to get from the farmer to the consumer. And there's a local real food alternative where you go straight from the farmer to the consumer in the same day. And, I think this model is going to resonate much, 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 much more than it even did, pre-COVID. It will have a much broader acceptance. So that's good for everyone in urban farming. But of course, we also have to think about, how we do that in a world where we're in a recession, right? And so maybe people aren't prepared to spend, as much on their food as they were today. Now, when we talk about urban farming, we always draw an analogy with Tesla Motors, right? Tesla Motors, when they started, where the cost of the technology was, it made economic sense for them at that point to go build a $100,000 sports car, the Roadster, and that was the first thing that they built. But in their mind was electric cars for everyone, right? And by building that Roadster, that then gave them the runway to go figure out the Model S, the family sedan. You can get that car to more people, and by building the Model S, that gives you the runway to build the Model 3. You get that to even more people, and eventually you have electric cars for everyone. And, I've always thought that we're on a similar journey, right? The sort of premium herbs that we grow today in New York, right? Well, maybe that's our Roadster. And, I was thinking, okay, we got to start to figure out the Model S, in the next 2 or 3 years. I just think we have to start figuring out that Model S now and, making sure that this beautiful, pesticide-free, loved by the farmer product is even more accessible and more available to a wider community. So those are the things that we're thinking about at Square Roots, and very happy to answer any questions now.
Thank you so much, Tobias. Let's have a big virtual round of applause for Tobias Peggs, CEO of Square Roots. I found that presentation very informative, excellent, also inspiring to see the growers in action, inspiring to learn about the adaptation strategies, but also the visuals that you all know how to present always really help tell the story. So thank you so much for that, Tobias. So let's dive into some questions. I'm just gonna stop your screen for a moment unless we need to bring it back up. Do you mind changing that?
You want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, just so we have a bit more conversation. Thanks. So you talked a lot about at the end you talked about the post-COVID-19 consumer, which was really fascinating. This consumer is going to be at home, cooking more, asking for more transparency, et cetera. And I just want to ask the audience here for that question. Do you think that post-COVID-19, when things calm down, are you going to be spending more time shopping at the grocery store? Or do you think you're going to rush back to restaurants like before? Give us your answers here in the comments. But my question for you, Tobias, is really about the post-COVID-19 grower. You know, what Square Roots has done is it's really had an amazing response to the energy that we're very familiar with at Agritecture, the enthusiasm to grow food locally, the enthusiasm around social entrepreneurship. How do you see that audience, these people that end up working with you and sometimes become full-time employees, how do you see that audience changing and their psychology and their interest shifting post-COVID-19?
That's a really interesting question. Just before we talked here, I was reading a New York Times story around the rise of domestic farmers, right? There's a huge spike in demand in the US right now for people wanting to buy chickens to build a chicken coop in their back garden. Someone I was reading about suddenly become a thyme farmer, right? Because he wants herbs to put on these chickens, and he's also growing when he roasts the chicken, but also thyme has got kind of antibacterial properties as well, right? Sure. He's making his own hand sanitizer through the thyme. So very, very interesting. So I do think, more people will certainly have a thought of, maybe I should be a farmer, right? I think, we have interviewed thousands and thousands of young people who were attracted to our program initially. And obviously you were very instrumental when we started doing that, whenever that was 3 or 4 years ago, right, and helping us with that first that first cohort. And right, a lot of people have got a very romantic notion of what it's like to be a farmer. It is hard work, very, very, very hard work. Even if you're surrounded by all this incredible technology and team and training like you are at Square Roots, it is hard work. And so I think a lot of people are probably going to try it and then maybe end up becoming even more appreciative of the people that are doing the work to get that food on your plate because they know that it's hard work. Here's one thing that might happen though, right? Obviously, the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry has been hit hard. If you think about teams that are in kitchens, they share a very similar philosophy or mission to the farmer, right? They want to get good food to people and build community through food. And obviously those people are very well versed in food safety and they know how to work in a team and they work very, very hard. And so I do wonder if, there's like a very kind of seamless career shift that may well happen there. And we'll see people from that hospitality industry, right, that formerly were working in kitchens. I think careers in urban farming now almost taking a step back in the supply chain and getting to the actual source, right, and growing that food. I think that's a very interesting opportunity. And that's certainly something we're looking at Square Roots, as we think about our next cohort of farmers, do we make that sort of geared up for, folks that now find themselves unemployed in the hospitality industry? Can we provide a career switch for them and kind of help them take the next step in their career?
That's a super fascinating observation and absolutely correct those habits that you learn in the restaurant industry or in the kitchen, really, there is a translation to agriculture that's very interesting to consider there. So speaking of the hard work that the farmers are doing, on your packages, you have, noted they're hand harvested. Now that's true, but it's also to connect the consumer to the grower itself. So my question is really, I know you're adapting to COVID-19, but my question is really more about tech. You come from a tech background, you've had successful tech exits. Do you think that in the future, Square Roots packaging will say robot harvested? And do you think that, what is the tech you're excited about post COVID-19? Do you think there's going to be some acceleration in certain tech for your company as a response to this?
Yeah, so to answer that, quickly and upfront, I do not see our packaging saying harvested by robots anytime soon. There's a couple of, I have this discussion a lot. I see the automated, lettuce harvesters or whatever kind of popping out. I've been to Green Tech in Holland and seen kind of, where we are with robotics. The sort of cognitive load of looking at that plant on harvest day and thinking, okay, is this premium product? Does the leaf look amazing? Does it smell fantastic? Is there anything happening here? How long is that stem? Does the consumer want that? How do I get that into the package to make it look fantastic? These are like millions and millions and millions of decisions that skilled farmer is making in their mind all day long, right, to get that beautiful package to you. And as you said, I'm a techie. I have a PhD in AI, and I'm really excited about one day the robot doing that. But we're a long way from doing that. The other side of it, though, is my co-founder Kimball Musk, has spent 15 years as a real kind of leader in the real food movement, and he was the one that taught me that the farmer is the magic ingredient in growing food, right? That is it's the farmer that's willing the plant to come to life that makes it taste so amazing, right? They give it the love. That's that magic ingredient. And as a computer scientist, I must admit, when I first heard that, I was like, oh, I can't quite compute that, this very intangible thing about love.
I remember.
And when you taste the food, when you taste the, like I can grow basil in our farm and it tastes like nothing, right? And then one of our farmers grows the same, but in the same environment with the same thing, right? But they're giving it the love and it just tastes amazing. I don't know what it is, but it's real. So we always think at Square Roots about having the farmer at the center of the system. Now, we built a lot of technology here. And we've built really an operating system for the company that's called the Farm Tool Belt, that guides the farmers through their day-to-day activity and captures data around what's going on at every single step of the system, and allows us to analyze what's going on in the farm and how we can improve things going forward. And what we're doing at Square Roots now is thinking about how that farmer tool belt can help an individual farmer become even more of a superhuman than they are today, right? How can we provide the right data at the right time with the right insights that just help that farmer make decisions twice as fast as they used to be able to, so that potentially one day they're able to harvest twice as much right, as they can today, right? So I think that's the approach that we've taken. And if anybody's interested, you can go to squareroots.com and look at our blog. And our software product manager, Johnny Hitman, actually put up an amazing post yesterday around how the whole engineering team is, thinking about the next evolution of this operating system, the Farmer Tool Belt, in light of, everything we're learning in COVID-19.
Yeah, I love that name, the Tool Belt, because it resonates with, what farmers use. And also, as a software digital tool, it's really about tech enablement. You're taking the superpowers of the best growers that have those good habits, that have those observation skills, and you're maximizing them, which is what technology really should be all about, not replacing humans, but empowering us to do our best, cleanest, most productive, sustainable work. That's the future we all want to see. So this is a bit of an unusual question, but work with me here, Tobias. So, back in the old days, pre-COVID-19, right, we talked about adapting to climate change through indoor farming. That was one of the kind of narratives that's out there, right? The climate changes, we run out of water, indoor farming uses less. The climate changes, it gets hotter, indoor farming provides stable environments. When you were talking to your co-founder, Kimball Musk and other colleagues when you started the business, or even thinking about starting the business at Square Roots, Could you ever have imagined having to adapt to something like this? And how indoor farming, do you think that indoor farming is more suited to adapt to these kinds of, pandemics, or is it only kind of those environmental topics? And I guess what's the broadness, if you see it, of the adaptation ability of indoor farming?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are parallels. What you're talking about, climate change means that the outside environment is not stable, and in order to secure a safe supply of food, we need a stable environment. And so, great, build indoors where you can control that environment. Now, I don't think anybody saw a pandemic, right? But kind of at the abstract level, it is another change to the environment. And I think that's probably why a lot of indoor farmers have been able to take this in their stride somewhat. As I said, I mean, we've changed some of our workflows and our operations to ensure social distancing, but, broadly speaking, things are kind of pretty similar to, today to how they look, 6 weeks ago. If you're an outdoor farmer, like, you're struggling right now, right? Most people on this conference will know that 90% of the lettuce that we eat in the US is grown in California and Arizona. And those farms are staffed by migrant workers. And, if the borders are closed, how are those migrant workers coming in, right? And even if they do, they tend to live in very kind of close quarter, cramped conditions. That's not great for health. And even if you have an industrial farmer that's doing something there and creating or, providing decent working conditions, when you're on the farm, how do you, go about your workflows with social distancing enforced, right? Now I can't all be, cramped together during the harvest. I have to be 6 foot away from each other. It's much more inefficient. And we're heading to a place there where there's going to be a lot of food left in the ground, and it's going to rot.
A lot of waste, a lot of food waste happen. Yeah.
That is, right, ton of food waste, and then does that create issues in the supply chain?
In contrast, you can kind of turn off the system, right? I mean, you have some waste that's going to happen, but your ability to kind of visit a farm and see multiple plant sites in a smaller area and sort of shut it down and adapt in that way is probably more you're more adaptable as an indoor farm, right?
That's exactly right. And listen, I want to be clear here. I think, in this, in the situation that we're in, where there is, economic devastation and personal tragedy everywhere, this is not, I think, the environment for me to say, well, urban farming is going to disrupt agriculture and it's the future. And I'm not looking at this as like an opportunity to push our thing. It's like,
right,
we all have to work together to figure out how to get food on the plate. Right. So I want to make that very clear. But if we're then talking specifically about how indoor versus outdoor is perhaps more adaptable to some climate change, then yes, no doubt indoor, it is a solution there, as I said, to provide a safe and secure supply of food for sure.
And also we're learning. I mean, indoor farming is still in its relative infancy, and this pandemic is a new experience for all of us. So, we're observing, and we'll see, how that adaptation works for everyone. But certainly, as you said, everyone's going through it. I was talking to 3 different urban farmers on a previous conversation for the conference. And you're talking about salary cuts, job cuts, a lot of issues. And when you work so closely with people in the context of agriculture, where it is a lot of sweat and daily struggle together, I think that's especially hard. Same with the restaurant industry, very, very hard to do that with your team. Let's talk a little bit about leadership, Tobias. You've had a number of really big leadership roles, and now you're in the vertical farming space. What are the attributes that you think make an adaptable leader?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the first thing I'll say is that I feel very proud of our leadership team that we've assembled at Square Roots. Watching how they, recognized what could happen very early and put in place, contingency plans and processes so that we knew as soon as, the trigger in New York was when we sort of recognized community spread of the virus, right? We immediately jumped into what we call level 2 operations, which was, a new way of working, You know, non-farm team all working from home. We become remote overnight. Half of the farm team also working from home because we wanted to create more space in the farms. You know, rapid rollout of e-learning systems for people whose job had changed. You know, all of that was kind of in place, and the leadership team that we had at Square Roots have done an amazing job there.
But what about the attributes? Those are really specific examples of adaptation, which are great.
Yeah.
But
So what I think they are is, you know, I think a big part of the role right now is to clearly communicate what is going on and how that impacts us as a company and you as an individual in you know, non-hyperbolic, just like very factual way, so that everybody completely understands what's going on. And again, right, the way that we're doing that is we've sort of set up a process almost where we're digesting a lot of information that's coming at us, right? There are fire hoses of information from the FDA and the CDC and every room you read on social media and news stories and this and that and the other. And if, you know, all 60 of our employees were digesting that information and trying to figure out the pathway through, it would just be complete chaos. And so we've, again, I'm talking about maybe an adaptation rather than a characteristic, right? But we've sort of realized that we as that leadership team have to digest all of that information and then figure out the signal from the noise. Right. And if we have to then quickly react and come up with a policy that you know, adapts to some signal, we can do that quickly again. So that's a characteristic: quick, decisive action, and then communicate it very, very clearly so that everyone knows what's going on. Excuse me. And that's done with a sense of calm as well. Those would be the characteristics that I, you know, applaud our team for exuding like so much in the last month.
Yeah, those are great. I mean, honestly, I have to say I observed a lot of those in you when we first met and started working together, because you emphasized process all the time. Process. You emphasize it all the time consistently. And I think that's what helps you be resilient in your life or in business, is if you have process, then you can kind of get the right data and be able to respond in the right way. And it sounds like you've created that across the company, which is incredible. So I'll just ask our audience, what are some of the leadership traits that you think are necessary to adapt to crises in the future or crises like COVID-19? Let us know in the comments. Last question for you, Tobias. I saw on social media recently that you hired a staff member completely virtually, right? So A to Z, posting the job, doing the interviews, making the offer. What was that like when you have such a kind of, you know, human connection, hand-harvested connection in your business? Tell us briefly about that.
Well, I mean, you know, that hand-harvested connection in the business, but in my career, in 20 years, this is the first time I've been involved in a hiring process where I've not spent personal time with the candidate. It was pretty amazing. Now, you know, what we were able to do there is, you know, when we first put the company together 3 or 4 years ago, one of the first exercises that we went through were to codify our values and our MO, right? So we put a mission statement together: let's bring real food to people in cities, and let's do that by empowering the next generation of leaders. So fine, that's what we're going to do for the next 50 years. And then how do we do that? We put down values and an MO, right? So kind of, okay, well, what is this company going to feel like on a day-to-day basis, right? And basically what we're trying to do is say, listen, if we're signing up to work at this company for the next 10 or 20 years, let's go build a company that we want to come and work at every day, right? Let's kind of codify the culture, and then we know what it's going to feel like. And, you know, I think we've done a really good job as we've scaled the team. We've also scaled the culture. And the way that we've done that is we put together a very robust recruiting process. I'll use that term again, right? It's all about process, where throughout that interview process, we're really digging for these values and these MOs to make sure that the candidate, obviously, as well as being technically qualified for that particular role, is going to be a cultural fit for the company as well. And so, you know, I think that gives us a lot of comfort right now, where we're unable to meet that person, you know, face to face, but the process is still telling us, yes, this person is going to be a cultural fit based on, you know, certain activities we've asked them to do, or answers that they've given us with certain questions. And so, yeah, we've actually just hired a very senior person for our team, our finance director, our head of finance, you know, who joins our executive team, and
Wow.
you know, is a person I'm going to be working with, you know, every single day. And we've not met, but I already feel like I really, you know this person, and I'm so excited about what she's going to bring, you know, to the company, to our people, and you know, honestly, to the industry as a whole.
Yeah, fascinating. Another example of how that process can create resilience when you need someone. That foundation you've built from those first cohort of recruiting, you know, recruiting the first cohort has really kind of extended even through this time. So that's really, really interesting, exciting to hear. So we're going to wrap up here in a second, in a minute, because you can see the sun has gone down in Oman. But Tobias, where can people learn more about Square Roots, and where can people reach out and try and connect with you, maybe social media or whatever you want to promote here?
Sure. So we're very, very active on social media as a company. You can follow us on Instagram or Twitter at Square Roots Grow. And then our website is squarerootsgrow.com. Worthwhile going there to read our blog. We're blogging very sort of actively about the changes that we're making as we react to COVID. And also you can go to that website, squarerootsgrow.com, and sign up for our virtual farm tour. You know, as you know, the farm tours that we do on a monthly basis are a big part of bringing the community into the farm and getting people connected with their local farmer. Kind of hard to do that right now, but we figured out how to do that in a virtual way. And the first virtual farm tour, I think, is on April 22nd.
Well, I'm not going to miss it. Thank you so much, Tobias Peggs, CEO of Square Roots. Definitely check them out. If you enjoyed this presentation, please subscribe to us at youtube.com/agritecture and check out all of the past videos at agritecture.com/digital-conference. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Tobias Peggs.
Thank you, Henry.